The moment I laid eyes on Leo, standing there with that all too familiar grin, it was like a punch to the gut, a good one, if that makes sense. My life with Michael, a man whose idea of a wild night was reviewing legal briefs, flashed before my eyes, dull and monochrome against the vibrant shades of my past with Leo. Anna. Leo's voice pulled me back from the edge of the rabbit hole I was about to tumble down. Yeah, it's me, I managed, my voice a mix of shock and a thrill I hadn't felt in years. Our coffee shop rendezvous, supposed to be a quick catch-up between old college friends, spiraled into something neither of us had planned. Leo's laughter filled the spaces in my heart that I didn't know were empty. By the time we said goodbye, the seed of something forbidden was already planted. Sneaking around with Leo felt like being on a high-speed chase, thrilling but terrifying. Each secret meeting, each stolen kiss, was a rebellion against the mundane existence I'd resigned myself to. But with every lie I told Michael, the weight of my guilt grew heavier. Michael's suspicions didn't take long to surface. His cold, lawyerly demeanor turned icy, his questions sharper, more probing. I brushed them off, feigned innocence. But the unease gnawing at me grew with each passing day. The day I found the hidden camera in my car was the day my carefully constructed world started to crumble. Panic seized me, a cold hand gripping my heart. Michael knew how much, I wasn't sure, but the game was up. The confrontation was inevitable. Michael, with his damning evidence, faced me across our marble kitchen island, a battlefield for our crumbling marriage. The hurt in his eyes was something I hadn't expected, overshadowed by the anger I'd braced for. Why, Anna? His voice was a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. I had rehearsed 1,000 apologies, 1,000 explanations, but faced with his pain, they all seemed feeble, inadequate. Yet, in that moment of total despair, my resolve hardened. Leo had reignited a part of me I thought was dead. I wouldn't, snuff it out again. Not even for Michael. I'm sorry, Michael. I can't do this anymore. My voice was steady, the words feeling more like a declaration of freedom than an apology. Leaving Michael for Leo was like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I chose Leo, chose the uncertainty and passion he offered over the cold, predictable life with Michael. But as I stood on the threshold of my new beginning, the weight of my choices bore down on me. The thrill of the affair had blinded me to the consequences, and now, faced with the reality of what I'd done, the seeds of regret began to take root. Yet, there was no turning back. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. I never pictured myself as the other woman, you know? The kind you see in those trashy TV dramas, clutching at straws, trying to stitch a life together from her own wreck. But here I am, sitting in what used to be our bedroom, not just a box of memories I'm not allowed to touch. Let's just say, life with Leo was a crash course in reality. His charm, that same allure that pulled me away from my marriage, evaporated quicker than a puddle in the desert. The first month was a haze of what I thought was bliss. But as the weeks rolled on, Leo's true colors bled through. The man was about as reliable as a paper umbrella. His promises of a better life, a more passionate existence, were just mirages. I found myself missing Michael's steady, if distant, presence. But what's done was done, right? Money, or the lack thereof, turned out to be a cruel teacher. Without Michael's income, our finances went into a tailspin. I'd lie awake, listening to Leo's snores, wondering how we ended up here. Then came the day I found those damning receipts. Leo wasn't just bad with money, he was hemorrhaging it through every slot machine and poker table in town. Desperate, I reached out to Sarah, my only friend who hadn't picked sides. Michael's a wreck, but he's moving on, she said. Those words, they hit harder than I thought. Part of me wanted to rejoice, but the larger part, the part that still wore his ring on a chain around my neck, a little more. So, I swallowed my pride, which tasted a lot like defeat, and went back to Michael. I made a mistake, I told him, standing at our front door, feeling like a stranger. But the man who looked back at me wasn't the Michael the first left. This version was colder, his eyes holding a glint of something I couldn't place. I'll take you back, he finally said. But things will be different. Different was an understatement. Michael's conditions were clear. My life would be an open book for him to read whenever he pleased. No more secrets, no more lies. I agreed, not realizing I was trading one prison for another. And so began my life in a gilded cage. Michael installed cameras, monitored my calls, approved my outings. My freedom, the very thing I thought I was choosing with Leo, was a mirage. And every time I looked in the mirror, I saw her. The woman who chose passion over stability and ended up with nothing. As I sit here, recounting the steps that led me to this moment, I can't help but wonder if there was ever a right choice. Leo's betrayal cut deep, but Michael's revenge? It's a slow poison, one that's killing me softly. I'm left wondering who the real prisoner is in this twisted love story of ours. The moment I found out about Michael's real plan, my world stopped spinning. It was like one of those thriller movies where the protagonist realizes they're not the hunter, but the prey. And let me tell you, feeling like a pawn in someone else's game of chess? It sucks. I was rifling through Michael's study. Yeah, I know, not my proudest moment. When I stumbled upon a stack of documents, bank statements, loans, and debts, all leading back to one name. Leo. My heart sank as the pieces clicked together. Michael wasn't just trying to punish me, he was using me to destroy Leo. Before I could process it all, Leo himself came crashing back into my life with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. Anna, we need to talk, he pleaded over the phone, desperation lacing his voice. But before I could even consider it, Michael was there, his shadow looming over me. The confrontation was inevitable. Leo, fueled by a mix of desperation and hope, showed up at our door, ready to fight for us. But Michael, always 2 steps ahead, was ready. The air crackled with tension as they faced off, words sharp as knives. I stood there, a silent witness to the madness I'd helped create. Michael's grip on Leo tightened with every passing day, his manipulation reaching new heights. He was playing a dangerous game, using Leo's debts as leverage to keep him under control. And me? I was the bait, the dangling carrot to keep Leo in line. I couldn't let it happen. Not like this. I had to warn Leo, to tell him the truth about Michael's vendetta. But every attempt was thwarted by Michael's omnipresent surveillance. My every move, every word, was monitored, leaving me trapped in a web of deceit. That's when the mysterious ally from my past stepped in. Call him fate, karma, or just dumb luck. But when I saw his message, a flicker of hope ignited within me. He knew things that could turn the tide in our favor. There's a way out, he promised. But it'll take everything you've got. We started plotting, working in the shadows to outmaneuver Michael. It was a game of cat and mouse, a battle of wits and wills. I was all in, ready to do whatever it took to escape the nightmare my life had become. But Michael, ever the strategist, was ahead of us. Did you really think you could outsmart me, Anna? He asked one evening, his voice calm, his eyes cold. He knew about my ally, had probably known from the start. My heart sank as I realized the depth of his control. He wasn't just a step ahead. He was writing the playbook. The moment I thought I had everything figured out, my world imploded. It was like standing on a rug, so plush you never thought it'd be yanked from under you. But yanked it was, and down I went. My plan, the one that was supposed to be my grand escape with Leo, crumbled into nothing right before my eyes. It wasn't just a failure, it was a spectacle. Leo, my beacon of hope in a sea of regret, was taken away in handcuffs, his eyes wide with confusion and betrayal. He looked at me, and in that glance, I saw the collapse of all our dreams. It was supposed to be us against the world, but there I stood, alone, as he was whisked away by the police for debts he never even knew had been called in. That's when the truth hit me like a freight train. My so-called ally, the one person I thought was on my side, was nothing more than a pawn in Michael's elaborate game. The realization was cold and sharp. I thought you were helping me. I confronted them, the hurt evident in my voice. Their response was a shrug, devoid of any remorse. Michael's plan was always going to win, Anna. I just made sure I was on the winning side. Betrayal never comes from enemies. It's the knife in your back, wielded by a hand you once held. That's what hurt the most. Not just the betrayal itself, but who it came from. In the aftermath, I dug deeper, desperate to understand why Michael would go to such lengths. What I found was a Pandora's box of secrets and lies, a hidden chapter of Michael's life that explained his insatiable need for control and revenge. It wasn't just about us. It was about a wound so deep, so festering, that it had turned love into a game of chess. The weight of my decisions bore down on me, a relentless force that pushed me into a corner of despair. With Leo behind bars and no ally in sight, the enormity of my mistake was undeniable. I had underestimated Michael, and now I was paying the price. I needed closure, or at least an understanding of why. Why go through all this? Why turn love into a battlefield? So, I confronted Michael, my voice barely a whisper. Why? His answer was a glimpse into a mind twisted by past hurts and betrayal. To teach you a lesson about loyalty, Anna, about the consequences of your actions. His justification was as cold as ice, a testament to the chasm between us. There was no love here, only lessons and cruelty. That confrontation was my moment of realization. The full extent of my actions, the pain I caused, not just to Michael and Leo, but to myself, became painfully clear. I was no innocent victim in this tale. I was a willing participant in a game I never fully understood. In the thick of night, my heart thundered a warning I couldn't ignore. A plan, once a glimmer of hope, now teetered on the brink of disaster. I should have known better than to think I could outmaneuver Michael, but desperation breeds foolishness. The revelation hit me like a freight train. My defiance hadn't just burnt bridges, it had ignited a wildfire that consumed everything in its path, including an innocent soul I never meant to drag into this mess. The news came at dawn, wrapped in a somber tone that left no room for doubt. My actions, a domino chain of misguided decisions, had indirectly led to a tragedy that shattered an innocent life. The weight of this realization pinned me to the ground, a burden too heavy to bear. Michael's voice, cold and unyielding, detailed the fallout, ensuring I understood the extent of my culpability. His words, meant to chastise, only fueled my resolve. Redemption was a far cry, but I owed it to the shadows of my mistakes to try. Plans began to unravel as if fate itself mocked my attempts at penance. Each move, calculated to sever the ties that bound me to this orchestrated chaos, only entangled me further. Michael, a puppeteer delighting in my struggles, watched with a hawk's eye, ready to snip any thread of escape I might find. The escape attempt was a flash of recklessness, a momentary lapse in judgment that saw me dashing towards freedom, only to crash against the cold, unyielding reality of Michael's security, captured and dragged back to my golden cage. The illusion of control shattered, leaving behind the bitter taste of defeat. Punishment followed, not with the lash or lock, but with the psychological chains that tightened around my spirit. Michael's methods were meticulous, designed not to break the body, but to ensnare the mind. Isolation became my constant companion, whispering tales of despair and hopelessness. Yet, from the depths of desolation, an unlikely ally emerged. Jake, the quiet gardener whose presence I barely acknowledged, extended a hand. His motives, shrouded in mystery, promised one last shot at defiance. Skepticism gnawed at me, but the flicker of hope was too tempting to ignore. Together, we hatched a plan, our combined resolve fueling a strategy that might just topple the king from his throne. The climactic showdown loomed, a crescendo of all or nothing that would either grant me freedom or consign me to eternal captivity. The day of reckoning arrived with a storm on its heels, nature itself bracing for the fallout. Michael, ever the strategist, had anticipated our move. The showdown, instead of a battle of wits and wills, became a massacre of my last vestiges of hope. Secrets spilled like blood, staining the ground with the truth of intentions laid bare. In the end, the catastrophic failure was not just the plan but the very foundation of my existence. The loss was not just of freedom but of self. Michael's victory was absolute, leaving me a shell of the woman who once thought she could outplay the master. The silence that followed was deafening, a testament to the void that now defined my life. Caught in the web of my own making, I understood the true cost of my actions. Redemption was a myth, a tale for those whose mistakes hadn't yet cost them everything. As I stood amidst the ruins of my life, the lesson was clear. In the game of deceit and betrayal, the only winning move was not to play. The air feels thick, almost suffocating, as I sit in the silent aftermath of my shattered world. There's a deafening quiet that wraps around me, a stark reminder of the isolation I've earned through a series of choices I can hardly believe were my own. The once warm and inviting home Michael and I shared now feels like a cold, unforgiving prison. The fallout from my actions, my betrayals, and my misplaced trust in what I thought was love with Leo has left me vilified, a pariah in my own story. It's a bitter pill, realizing that those few who stood by me through thick and thin have finally turned their backs. Disillusioned, they've walked away, unable to watch me spiral further. Sarah, once my confidant, could only offer a pained look of disappointment before she too disappeared from my life. Their departures are silent indictments of my choices, each one a nail in the coffin of my former life. The final plot point in this twisted saga comes crashing down with the weight of inevitability. Michael, ever the strategist, reveals his masterstroke, a loss so profound and personal it feels like being gutted. The details are almost mundane, a financial ruin meticulously orchestrated to leave me with nothing. Not just penniless but devoid of hope, of dignity. It's his revenge, a punishment far more cruel and calculated than any fleeting moment of physical pain could ever be. Paranoia becomes my constant companion, whispering lies and truths in equal measure. I see Michael's hand in every shadow, every unexpected sound. He's everywhere and nowhere, a ghost haunting the edges of my fractured psyche. This descent into madness is perhaps the cruelest part of his revenge, leaving me to question what's real and what's a figment of my increasingly unreliable perception. But then, when I think there's nothing left to lose, I discover a betrayal that cuts deeper than any before. Hidden amidst the financial documents Michael left for me to find is evidence of an affair, not mine, but his. A calculated, cold relationship, not born of passion but of strategy, a way to ensure I was truly alone, truly broken. It's the final twist of the knife, a betrayal designed not just to punish, but to obliterate any remaining shred of self-worth I had clung to. As I sit amidst the ruins of my life, I can't help but reflect on the choices that brought me here. There's no redemption arc waiting in the wings, no last-minute salvation. There's just me, Anna, the woman who gambled everything on a chance for passion and ended up losing far more than she ever imagined possible. The lesson is as harsh as it is clear. Actions have consequences, and some choices, once made, can never be undone. The day dawned bleak, the sky a mirror to my turmoil. There I was, cornered in the life I thought I wanted, realizing it was a facade crafted by my own betrayals and Michael's cold vengeance. The air in the house was thick, charged with a silent, impending doom. I could feel the walls closing in, each photograph, each memento mocking my downfall. My confrontation with reality was abrupt, like being doused with ice water. Michael, with his calculated moves, had left me marooned on an island of despair. The isolation was complete, a prison without bars, crafted meticulously through my own choices. In a last-ditch effort to reclaim some semblance of control, I plotted a final stand against Michael. It was a plan born of desperation, a flicker of rebellion in the overwhelming darkness. I reached out to the few allies I thought I had left, only to find doors closing one after the other. Betrayal, it seemed, was a cloak I could not shed. The day of reckoning arrived with an eerie quiet. My heart raced as I initiated my plan, a complex scheme to expose Michael, to shake off the chains he'd wound so tightly around me. But as the hours ticked by, it became clear that I was playing into his hands once again. My every move had been anticipated, my supposed allies nothing but pawns in Michael's game. The defeat was not just crushing, it obliterated the last vestiges of hope I harbored. Michael's victory was absolute. He didn't just defeat me, he annihilated every trace of the person I once was. Standing before him, I saw not a flicker of triumph in his eyes, but a cold satisfaction. His revenge was complete, leaving me a shell of my former self. In the aftermath, I found myself spiraling into an acceptance as grim as the life I now faced. There was no denying it anymore. My choices, my betrayals, had led me here. The final revelation of Michael's manipulation, the depth of his control, was a blow. Not because it was surprising, but because it underscored just how far I'd fallen. Isolated completely, I became a prisoner in a gilded cage of my own making. The house, once a home, now felt like a mausoleum, each room echoing with the ghosts of my past decisions. The realization that revenge, both sought and enacted, had been the architect of my ruin was a silent reflection that permeated the air, a lesson learned too late. The story culminates not with a bang but a whimper. The dramatic, non-positive conclusion sees me facing a future devoid of hope, redemption, or escape. A cautionary tale, indeed, of betrayal, regret, and the destructive nature of revenge. My last thoughts, as I resigned myself to this fate, were not of sorrow or even anger but of a profound emptiness. The cost of my actions, don't get me wrong, Michael's a good guy. Stable job, decent haircut, always remembers my birthday, kind of, but lately, good guy, feels like the participation trophy of marriage. We haven't had a real fight in, like, forever. It's all beige walls and lukewarm coffee. Where'd the passion go? Then, bam, David walks into a work conference looking like a GQ model come to life. Funny, charming, with eyes that could melt glaciers. We ended up networking until the bar closed, swapping stories and laughing way too loud. Back at the hotel, I snuck into my room, heart pounding like a drum solo. My phone buzzed. It was David, a text message teasing about my killer dance moves. Stupid? Maybe. But it felt good to laugh with someone who saw me, not just the wife in khakis and a ponytail. That night, sleep became a distant memory. I traded text with David until dawn, the playful banter turning flirty, then downright suggestive. This wasn't networking anymore. It felt like danger, maybe even a little exciting. The next morning, guilt gnawed at me like yesterday's burnt toast. But back home, the beige walls and Michael's predictable routine felt suffocating. I needed an escape, a splash of color in this monotonous life. So, I started small. A new lipstick, a flirty dress for work. Little things to remind myself I wasn't just Mrs. Michael anymore. Then came the late nights. Heavy workload. I tell Michael, my voice laced with fake exhaustion. He'd just nod, never questioning. Easy target. I thought with a pang of something, maybe shame? But David's texts were a thrilling secret. A world away from Michael's snoring and reruns. I was getting tangled in a web of my own making, and a part of me knew it wouldn't end well. But for now, the thrill of the forbidden felt too good to resist. Dinner with David was electric. We snuck away from the stuffy conference after party, finding a hidden jazz bar with dim lights and even dimmer whiskey. The conversation flowed like the smooth bourbon I was sipping, punctuated by David's easy laughter. My phone buzzed. Michael. Ignoring it felt like a tiny rebellion. A secret thrill that shouldn't have been exciting. Work's running late. I texted back, my fingers flying across the screen. David's gaze met mine, a knowing glint in his eyes. We talked for hours, about anything and everything, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. He complimented my new dress, a figure-hugging number I'd bought for this very occasion. You look incredible, he murmured, his voice husky. Compared to Michael's mumbled, looks nice. It was a symphony. By the time I stumbled back to my hotel room, the guilt was a dull ache in the pit of my stomach. But nestled amongst the crumpled receipts and lipstick stains was a memory of laughter and unexpected connection. It was a dangerous high, and I knew I shouldn't chase it. Yet, part of me craved more. Back home, the routine felt suffocating. Michael, bless his oblivious heart, was excited about a weekend camping trip he'd planned. The thought of being trapped in a tent with him for 2 days made me break out in hives. I faked a headache, claiming work deadlines. The disappointment in Michael's eyes was a flicker of pain, quickly replaced by his usual easygoing nature. He offered to help with the work, oblivious to the irony. I brushed him off, retreating to the spare room with my laptop and a churning conscience. Every notification from David sent a jolt through me, a welcome distraction from the guilt gnawing at me. My credit card bill arrived a few days later, a stark reminder of my new spending habits. The dresses, the dinners, the secret rendezvous, it was all adding up. I stuffed the bill in the back drawer, a silent promise to deal with it later. Denial felt easier than facing the truth. Michael deserved better, but the thrill of the forbidden, the feeling of being desired, was intoxicating. It was a dangerous game, and I was playing with fire. But for now, the heat felt good. My stomach lurched as Michael glanced at my phone over dinner. David had sent a hilarious meme, and a snort escaped me before I could stop it. Michael's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, just work stuff," I mumbled, shoving the phone into my purse a little too forcefully. It felt like a spotlight had suddenly been switched on, revealing the dance I was doing on a tightrope. Later, alone in the bathroom, I deleted the message with a practiced ease. Each notification, each deleted message, was a tiny betrayal, another brick in the wall I was building between Michael and me. The guilt gnawed at me, but so did the excitement building for the weekend. I booked a last-minute work retreat to a charming bed and breakfast, a lie that sat heavy in my stomach. The hidden suitcase in the back of my closet mocked me. Lingerie, a new dress, everything screaming, weekend getaway, more than work retreat. Michael deserved better. He deserved a wife who remembered his birthday, not one who forgot and scrambled to buy a generic card at the last minute. The disappointment in his eyes was a punch to the gut, another casualty in my web of deceit. Packing the hidden bag felt like prepping for a heist, a thrill laced with fear. Would I get caught? Would this secret weekend with David be everything I fantasized about, or something else entirely? Part of me craved the escape, the chance to feel desired again. But another, quieter part, whispered warnings I desperately tried to ignore. Pushing the doubts aside, I zipped the bag shut. The excitement was a fragile flame, and I clung to it, ignoring the growing inferno of guilt threatening to consume me. "Don't worry, Sarah's covering my shift," I lied to Michael, shoving a suitcase into the trunk. My stomach twisted. Sarah was on vacation, and work retreat was a flimsy excuse at best. But the thrill of the stolen weekend with David overshadowed the guilt. The drive was a whirlwind of nervous excitement. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a mix of fear and anticipation. What if something went wrong? What if Michael found out? The bed and breakfast was charming, all exposed beams and crackling fireplaces. But the magic quickly faded. The stolen moments with David, while passionate, felt hollow. The guilt was a constant shadow, lurking at the edges of our laughter. By the time I returned home, I was exhausted, emotionally drained. Michael, bless his heart, had made dinner. The sight of him, a beacon of normalcy in my tangled web of lies, filled me with a strange resentment. "How was the retreat?" he asked, his voice laced with a hopefulness that hurt. "Stressful," I lied again. "Late nights, endless meetings." My voice trailed off, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. He didn't press me, and the silence felt deafening. Curling up on the couch, I felt miles away from Michael, despite sharing the same space. My phone buzzed with a text from David, a cheerful reminder of the weekend's deceit. Looking at Michael, his kind eyes filled with unspoken concern. A wave of shame washed over me. Here I was, comparing him to David, highlighting his flaws and downplaying everything good about the man who'd been my rock for 5 years. The excitement of the affair had dimmed, replaced by a dull ache of regret. The stolen weekend had left me feeling empty, a stark contrast to the comfort and security I took for granted with Michael. But stepping back from the brink felt impossible. I was trapped in a web of my own making, and the thought of unraveling it terrified me. Needed to talk, needed someone who wouldn't judge, someone who'd get it. So, I spilled the beans to Sarah over lunch. The words tumbled out, a messy confession about stolen weekends and secret texts. At first, Sarah's face was a mask of shock, but as I elaborated, a flicker of something else crossed it, maybe excitement, maybe a touch of envy. She didn't judge. Not exactly. Instead, she peppered me with questions. her voice a conspiratorial whisper. He's everything Michael isn't, right? She said, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous understanding. The truth stung. David was exciting, spontaneous, everything Michael wasn't. But suddenly, hearing it out loud made it sound less romantic and more like a cliché copyright. Still, Sarah's support, twisted as it was, felt like a lifeline. Having a secret keeper was a heady mix of thrill and fear. It was pushing the line further, blurring the edges between innocent flirtation and full-blown betrayal. Back home, the beige walls seemed to mock me. Michael, bless him, was oblivious. He put on a few pounds lately, and his hairline seemed to be retreating further with each passing year. Everything that used to be endearing now felt like flaws to be nitpicked at. Dinner turned into a minefield of arguments. He commented on my new top, bought specifically for David, and I snapped at him for not noticing my effort. The evening spiraled into a familiar pattern. Petty digs, hurt silences, and a cold, empty feeling that settled in my stomach. Another work conference loomed, the perfect excuse for another stolen weekend with David. This time, packing the bag felt less like a heist and more like a routine. The thrill had faded, replaced by a dull ache of guilt and a nagging fear of getting caught. But the thought of facing Michael, of his quiet acceptance and predictable routine, felt equally suffocating. I was trapped in a dance with two partners, a tangled web of my own making. The second, work conference, weekend was a far cry from the first. The stolen moments with David felt forced, the passion replaced by a hollow ache. We talked, but the conversation bounced around like a deflated beach ball. The excitement was gone, replaced by a nagging suspicion that maybe, just maybe, this forbidden thing wasn't all it was cracked up to be. On the drive back, my phone buzzed. It was Michael. A simple text, "Everything okay?" It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, sharp and unwelcome. Lying about the weekend felt more burdensome than ever. The usual thrill of getting away with it was gone, replaced by a heavy weight in my chest. Every lie, every secret felt like another brick in a wall I was building between myself and Michael. Back at home, Michael's smile seemed a little forced, his usual cheer replaced by a quiet sadness. It was a subtle change, but it felt like a punch to the gut. Was he on to me? Did he suspect something? Dinner was a strained affair. Conversation came in stilted bursts, punctuated by long silences. As Michael cleared the table, his hand brushed mine. It should have been a familiar touch, a comfortable moment. Instead, it sent a jolt through me, a reminder of the tangled web I was in. Later that night, David called. He was different, too. The playful banter was gone, replaced by a forceful urgency. "We can't keep doing this," he said, his voice tight. "Leave him. Start a new life with me." The idea of leaving Michael terrified me. The comfortable life we built, the shared memories, the familiarity, it all felt fragile, like a sandcastle threatened by a rising tide. But the thought of facing Michael, of seeing the hurt and disappointment in his eyes, filled me with dread. David's words echoed in my head. A fresh start, a chance for passion, but a nagging voice inside whispered a different truth. Maybe passion wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Maybe what I was chasing wasn't happiness, but a way to escape from a life that had grown stale. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the nightstand. The silence of the room pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. For the first time, I wasn't just scared of getting caught. I was scared of what I might actually find, if I dared to stop lying. Sarah was my lifeline, the only person who knew about the mess I'd gotten myself into. So, the next day, I spilled it all again. The hollow weekend with David, the guilt gnawing at me, and the terrifying idea of leaving Michael. "Maybe this whole David thing is just a fantasy," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly serious. "A way to escape feeling stuck in your life." Her words stung, but a tiny spark of truth flickered within them. Was David really the answer, or just a shiny distraction from a deeper problem? Part of me wanted to cling to the fantasy, to the promises of a passionate new life with David. But the thought of facing Michael, of the hurt and betrayal in his eyes, made me want to crawl under the covers and never come out. Sarah's voice cut through my fog. You need to end it, your name, before it destroys everything. Her advice was like a cold shower, a wake-up call I desperately needed. But ending things with David felt like jumping off a cliff, the ground far below obscured by swirling mist. That night, Michael surprised me with dinner reservations. Candles flickered on the table, casting a soft glow on his hopeful face. It was a desperate attempt to recapture a spark that had dimmed, and it ached to see him trying so hard. I choked back a sob, forcing a smile as I thanked him. The charade felt suffocating, every bite a lie caught in my throat. My phone buzzed on the table, a silent scream. It was a text from David, a casual message laced with an urgency I couldn't ignore. Panic surged through me, a cold sweat prickling my skin. Michael noticed the tremor in my hand, his hopeful expression faltering. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I opened my mouth to lie, but the words wouldn't come. The weight of my deception was a crushing burden, threatening to shatter the fragile reality we'd built. Looking into Michael's kind eyes, a decision flickered to life within me. It was shaky, uncertain, but it was a start. Maybe there was still a chance to salvage what we had. Maybe the spark wasn't gone, just buried beneath a mountain of lies and neglect. Taking a deep breath, I knew what I had to do. But how? Where do you even begin to untangle a web of deceit you've woven so tightly? My heart pounded like a drum solo in my chest. Dinner with Michael felt like a ticking time bomb. The guilt sat heavy in my stomach, a lead weight dragging me down. I needed to end things with David, but the words wouldn't form. Then, my phone buzzed. Seeing David's name on the screen was like a slap in the face. Panic surged through me. I mumbled an excuse about a work emergency, my voice tight with barely suppressed hysteria. Michael's confused frown added to my churning stomach. Rushing to the bathroom, I slammed the door shut. My fingers trembled as I dialed David's number. The second he picked up, I blurted it out. "We need to stop. This isn't working." Silence. Then, a tirade of angry words from David, his frustration a sharp contrast to his usual charm. The illusion I'd built around him started to crumble, revealing a possessiveness that sent another wave of panic crashing over me. Hanging up, I leaned against the cold tile, gasping for breath. The lie to Michael about the call felt like a flimsy bandage on a gaping wound. Every time I opened my mouth, another lie seemed to tumble out. Back at the table, Michael's hopeful smile had dimmed, replaced by a quiet sadness. The rest of the dinner was a strained affair, punctuated by awkward silences and forced conversation. Later that night, as Michael reached for my hand, I flinched. The simple touch felt like a betrayal, a stark reminder of the web of deceit I'd woven. He withdrew his hand slowly, his face etched with hurt. The next day at work, a single red rose sat on my desk. A note from David, his handwriting all flowery promises, felt suffocating instead of romantic. What had started as an exciting escape now felt like a cage, a trap of my own making. Sitting at my desk, a wave of longing washed over me. I missed the simple moments with Michael, the shared laughter over a silly movie, the comfortable silences that spoke volumes without words. The life I'd built with him, the familiar rhythm of our days, suddenly felt precious. The rose on my desk started to feel less like a symbol of passion and more like a glaring reminder of the mess I'd created. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix things. But how do you even begin to rebuild trust, piece by shattered piece, when you've broken it so badly? Lunch with Sarah was supposed to be a break, a chance to escape the suffocating weight of my lies. But the second I saw her face, the dam broke. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I blurted it all out. The affair, the guilt, the regret that gnawed at me like a hungry rat. Sarah didn't judge. Instead, she held my hand, a silent anchor in the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "You need to tell him," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The longer you wait, the worse it gets." Her words were a punch to the gut, the truth I desperately wanted to ignore. Facing Michael, the man I'd hurt so deeply, filled me with a dread so heavy it felt like I was wading through mud. The thought of losing him, of watching our life crumble to dust, was paralyzing. But the alternative was worse. Living a lie, constantly looking over my shoulder, was slowly eating me alive. I craved honesty, even if it meant facing the music. That night, as Michael settled on the couch with a book, my stomach churned. Taking a deep breath, I sat beside him. The words caught in my throat, a tangled mess of apologies and justifications. Michael, I finally croaked, we need to talk. He looked up, a flicker of hope crossing his face before it was overshadowed by a wary uncertainty. My voice trembled as I confessed everything. The stolen weekends, the desperate search for something missing, the crushing guilt that followed. Each word felt like a shard of glass tearing through me, but with each one, the burden lessened. As I finished, a heavy silence descended. Michael's face was unreadable, a mask of emotions I couldn't decipher. Was it anger? Hurt? Disappointment? The silence stretched on, each tick of the clock an eternity. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. Why? The question hung in the air, a simple word carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken accusations. There were no excuses, no justifications. All I could offer was a broken apology and a silent plea for a second chance. Looking into his eyes, I saw a flicker of the love we once shared, buried beneath a layer of hurt. Whether it was enough to rebuild what I'd so carelessly broken, I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, a flicker of hope ignited within